All my life, I've been trying to earn my father's approval, medals, awards, even bought a car with my annual salary so that he would finally say, "I'm proud of you." But that evening at the family table, he raised his glass and humiliated me in front of everyone. A minute later, I pulled out an envelope that changed my entire life and shattered the perfect family. Want to know what was inside, and why I no longer need his love or his last name? Listen to the end. This isn't just a family drama. It's a real lesson that could change your life too. My name is Emily Thompson. I'm 31 years old, and for almost all my life, I've been trying to earn my father's approval and love. Although the word love is a bit strong. My father has always been a harsh, principled man, and his only ideal is success and status, preferably public and tangible. I achieved what no one else in our family has. I built a career in finance, got a high position, and earned more than any of our ancestors ever did. But honestly, even my greatest achievements always seemed insignificant to him. My brother, he's the one who always succeeded. He's the one my father was truly proud of. My sister, she has a talent for navigating people. Always silent when needed, saying a kind word when needed, diffusing conflicts. I, on the other hand, always felt like an outsider. Since childhood, I felt like I don't belong. My father was never the one to come to school plays, ask how my day went, or help with homework. He was a strict judge who could find fault with any A. Why not better? Why not more? My mother was the complete opposite of him, although she seemed to disappear next to him. She became different, quiet, cautious. Never contradicted him. Never stood up for us if my father was unhappy. Sometimes I thought she was more afraid of him than she loved him. But when he wasn't home, she could hug me and say, "Everything will be fine. You're strong." But in his presence, she seemed to fade away. Almost every family event was a little exam, and the scariest of them all was our annual dinner, where all the relatives gathered. My father puts himself at the head of the table, and each of us involuntarily plays our role in his theater. This year is especially difficult for me. I already knew in advance that I would be out of place again, something would be said wrong again, and again I would go home with this feeling of inner emptiness. This year I decided to do the impossible. With the money I saved over the past few months, I bought him a luxurious Mercedes, a car he had dreamed of. I saw it at a friend's place and mentioned it in passing. I sincerely believed that if this gesture didn't melt his heart, if he didn't say at least thank you for this, then he probably never would. I thought everything through to the smallest detail, chose the right configuration, even the color, black, as he likes. I overpaid just to make everything perfect. I planned to give him the gift in advance, when no one was around, so as not to embarrass myself or him. And when the car was already parked at the dealership, and I was driving home with a box of keys in my hands, my heart was beating so hard that it felt like it would jump out of my chest. However, I didn't feel any joy, more like anxiety, because in my bag, besides the keys, there was another envelope. Recently, more out of curiosity, I ordered a DNA test. I wanted to find out about my origins and roots, but the result I received turned everything upside down. The test showed that Richard Thompson is not my father. I double-checked, did a repeat test using his toothbrush when I came to visit. Everything matched. At first, there was anger, then emptiness. And the question, does he know? It became clear why I had felt like an outsider all my life, why none of my successes were important to him. All this time I was torn. Should I tell him? But the closer the dinner day came, the more fatigue accumulated inside. I decided that if I were to reveal the truth, it would only be when the time was right. On the day I handed him the keys, he greeted me as always, dryly, without much emotion, as if I had caused an inconvenience. "Your early dinner is tomorrow," he said, looking at his watch. I said that I came on business and handed him the box. He opened it, saw the Mercedes emblem, and was surprised for a second. Then his gaze became colder than usual. "Are you kidding me?" he muttered. I led him to the window, showed him the car. For a moment, something resembling pride flashed in his eyes, but quickly changed to distrust. He walked around the car, asked about insurance and cost, looking more like an investor than a father. "Why did you do this?" he finally asked. I lied that I just wanted to make him happy, that I got a promotion, and could afford it now. He took the car for a ride, even praised it, but then hid it in the garage so that no one would see it before dinner. "Don't waste your money," he said in parting. "Looks like you have nowhere to put it." That's how that day ended. I stood in the living room, listened to the garage door slam, and understood. No car will replace a simple human word. "I'm proud of you." And the envelope with the analysis continued to burn my palm. On the day of the family dinner, I drove to my parents' house almost on autopilot. My thoughts were confused, my palms were sweaty, my heart was beating too fast. All the relatives and friends' cars were already in the yard, and I even recognized a couple of my father's colleagues by their Lexuses and Cadillacs. My gift, the Mercedes, was suddenly displayed in the most visible place near the front entrance, like a showcase of success, although it had been hidden in the garage yesterday. I saw my father at the gate. He was standing with two of his friends, obviously showing them the car, patting the hood, talking about the specifications, and never mentioning me. "New?" someone asked, passing by. "Decided to treat myself," my father replied with a smile, as if it were a normal purchase for a wealthy man. I exhaled and slowly walked towards the house. My mother met me at the door, kissed me on the cheek, praised my dress, but left a second later to greet new guests. In the living room, everything was as usual. Aunt Clara with a mug of coffee, Uncle George with a plate of snacks, my brother Brandon with his wife and 2 children. Everyone was smiling, patting each other on the shoulder. "Here's our financier," Uncle George shouted, shaking my hand. "Hi, Emily," Brandon said, not taking his eyes off his phone. Sophia, as always, came up first, hugged me, and whispered, "Hang in there. I'm here if you need me." Her support is like an anchor, even though she always tries not to get involved in conflicts. Dinner began like a performance of an old script. My father seated everyone, sat at the head of the table with Brandon and his wife next to him, then Sophia, her husband, and then the others. As usual, I was on the edge between my cousin and some young employee of my father's. Wine was poured, snacks were served by waiters. The noise of conversations grew. My father made a toast. He was glad to see family and friends. The main thing was to maintain traditions and build the future so that everyone could be proud of our family name. He raised his glass, everyone nodded, and I noticed that his gaze didn't even linger on me. Next, the standard program. Brandon was praised for his success in business, called the future of the family. Sophia was discussed, how she managed to combine work, children, and participation in charitable events. Sophia is great. She's the one to be emulated. My father smiled, patting her hand. My mother nodded too. Her smile was strained. I sat as if watching a play from the audience, where I didn't even have a supporting role. When someone mentioned my recent award and promotion, my father immediately changed the subject. Finance is risky. Real estate is completely different. Stability for decades, he nodded to the guests. "And when did you get the car?" a friend of my father's asked. "Just last week decided to change it," my father replied, as if I didn't exist. I felt that familiar pain again, as if I had been erased from the family portrait again. "And what about you, Emily, still alone?" my uncle asked loudly. "Is there really no one to make coffee for you in the morning at your age?" "Well, career is more important now," someone from the younger generation added sarcastically. The whole room laughed. I forced a smile and pretended to be amused. At that moment, I felt the envelope with the analysis in my bag start to burn my palm through my skin. I caught myself thinking more and more often, maybe I should reveal all the cards right now. A storm was brewing inside. I no longer had the strength to endure this silent contempt, this daily erasure of myself for the sake of the illusion of family. I looked at my mother. She caught my eye but immediately looked away, as if she was afraid that I might dare to do something. The evening had only just begun, but I already felt like a guest and a stranger at my own family celebration. Everything I had ever done was devalued here in no time. Every phrase, every glance only added to the internal conflict. Why was I doing all this? Why was I still hoping? I desperately wanted to get up and leave, but I stayed because I knew that everything could change today. and if not today, then never. Dessert had just been served, and the tension at the table hung like a thick veil. My father slowly poured himself some brandy, looked around at everyone with his usual importance, and stood up, as if he was about to give a speech that only he and, perhaps, Brandon were waiting for. "Family is the most important thing," he began, running his fingers over the stem of the glass. "We all work for one goal, to continue our business, build our name and traditions. It is especially gratifying to see how some have inherited the right traits and are not afraid of responsibility." He looked at Brandon and nodded with pride. "Brandon, your projects this year are the pride of the whole family. You truly live up to the Thompson name," he said, not hiding his admiration. Then his gaze softened as my father turned to Sophia. "Sophia, you are an example of how a woman can do it all, raise children and be useful to society. Your mother is happy with you, and so am I." The whole room froze, as if waiting for more. I knew what to expect. My father turned towards me. His face became harder. "Some, of course, perceive success in their own way," he continued slightly, but everyone heard it perfectly. "Neither titles nor apartments nor cars determine true value, but the ability not to abandon family for the sake of one's own ambitions. Such successes only look brilliant on paper. In reality, they are empty." A heavy pause hung in the room. Someone from the guests smiled uncertainly, as if hoping it was a joke. "Emily is doing well, building a career," he added mockingly. "But as life shows, this is not always something to be proud of." He didn't directly call me a disgrace to the family, but the meaning of his words left no doubt, as if I was superfluous here. Brandon pretended to listen attentively, but his eyes showed obvious joy at the scene. Sophia looked at me with pity, squeezing my hand tightly under the table. My mother sat as if paralyzed. Her lips were white, and her hands squeezed the napkin into a ball. At that moment, I felt transparent, as if I wasn't even in this room with crystal chandeliers, expensive dishes, and perfect guests. I thought, has he never seen the real me in all these years? Can't he recognize even my real achievements, not for him or the family, but for myself? I watched as people around me avoided eye contact. Relatives fussily leaned towards their plates. Someone started whispering. Somewhere on the verge of audibility, I caught one of the guests whispering to his wife, "As always, he'll definitely find someone to pick on." Some unknown force suddenly flared up inside me. I realized that no matter how hard I tried, no matter what I proved, it would all be in vain. Approval would never come, not because I was bad, but because he didn't need it. I suddenly felt ashamed, not for myself, but for him, for this demonstration in front of the whole family, for the fact that an adult man was ridiculing his daughter. My head suddenly became empty, but only one thought remained. Enough playing by these rules. Everything that happened next seemed to have been erased from my memory. I no longer heard the waiters clearing the table, didn't notice the smiles and whispers. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to justify myself, didn't seek salvation in the gaze of my mother or sister. I raised my eyes to my father and met his gaze cold, victorious. At that moment, something inside broke completely. I no longer belonged to this circle, was no longer going to deserve his praise. All my efforts turned out to be foreign, unnecessary in this house. Now I knew it was time to end this performance. I squeezed my bag in my hand, feeling the sharp corner of the envelope under my fingers. There was only one thought in my head. Now I will do what I should have done a long time ago. I got up from the table, not listening to anyone or anything. Everyone froze. The dishes clinked. Even the waiters froze with plates in their hands. I suddenly felt absolute silence, as if the whole room had stopped breathing. "Thank you, Dad, for your words," I said evenly, surprised by my own calmness. "I spent many years trying to prove my worth to you, but today I finally realized that I will never be able to fit into the framework you created." Everyone stared at me, as if waiting for a scene. But I was no longer going to hold back for their comfort. I took the envelope out of my bag and placed it in the center of the table, right in front of my father. "Here," I said quietly. "This is for you. This envelope contains the reason why you have always been a stranger to me."
For 3 decades, I blamed myself.
Why can't you be proud of me like Brandon or Sophia? Why is every step I take a mistake for you? Every success causes irritation. I looked into his eyes. They were cold, steely, and there was a flicker of fear in them for the first time in all these years. Here are the results of the DNA test. According to this test, you are not my father, I said clearly, not allowing my voice or hands to tremble. Something exploded in the room. First silence, then muffled exclamations. Sophia shrank into her chair, her lips trembling. Brandon jumped up, rushing towards me with an accusing look. What are you talking about? He hissed through his teeth. Is this your low revenge? My mother seemed to turn pale, her head drooped, and her hands remained clenched. My father slowly opened the envelope, taking out the paper with trembling fingers. For a moment, his face turned white. Then anger flared up, such as I had never seen even in the worst days. Do you want to destroy the family because of some test? He roared, glancing at the guests. Is that how you decided to make a name for yourself? I endured his gaze, not lowering my eyes. I just want to be myself, not a statistic in someone else's play, I replied. He crumpled the paper into a fist. You're disgracing your mother, he hissed. And never enter this house again. Brandon jumped up, looking at me with rage. Are you out of your mind? Do you want to destroy everything? He hissed. I said nothing, just turned around and walked towards the exit. Someone shouted something after me, but I didn't listen anymore. I walked down the corridor, feeling the weight leaving my chest with every step. I wasn't scared. It was surprisingly easy. I went outside, the car keys in my hand. I took them this morning, as if I knew how this day would end. I got behind the wheel, slammed the door shut. Behind the house, bright lights blazed. Inside, there was a commotion. Someone was running around the rooms, someone was shouting, someone was already trying to call me. I started the car, slowly drove along the path past other people's expensive cars. Never before had this street seemed so short to me. The phone rang immediately. First my mother, then my sister, and then messages poured in from Brandon. Return the car immediately. You have no right to what belongs to our family. If you don't return it, we'll hire a lawyer. I silently turned off the sound and threw the phone on the seat. Only one thought was in my head. Finally, it's all over. I drove through the dark city, not looking back. For the first time in many years, I was free. This feeling was strange, unfamiliar, but desperately real. My chest became light, as if I was finally allowed to breathe deeply. Now only I determined my life and my home. I woke up in a cheap hotel room, looked at the ceiling for a long time. I didn't go home. I didn't want anyone from the family to be able to show up there. At any moment, I needed a place where no one would find me right away, and I chose a regular hotel in the city center. There were dozens of unread messages and missed calls on my phone, but I felt neither guilt nor anxiety. Only fatigue and, it seems for the first time in years, lightness. Of all the messages, only one was really important, from my mother. Short but honest. Please meet me. I need to explain everything to you. We met in a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, far from all the family places. My mother looked different, as if she had aged 10 years in one night. But there was no longer the usual fear in her eyes, only remorse. She didn't try to be evasive. His name is Michael Reynolds, my mother said, looking into her teacup. I met him at university, before I met your father. Michael wasn't one of those my family would approve of, but I loved him. When everything was revealed, my grandparents insisted on a breakup. Then I found out about the pregnancy and was already desperate. Then Richard appeared, smart, ambitious, an ideal candidate for everyone. He knew that the child was not his. He said he would give you his name if I forgot the past. For the first time in all these years, my mother looked me in the eyes, not hiding behind a smile. I always hoped that he could love you as his own. I was wrong.
Time went on.
The truth seemed more and more dangerous. And then it was too late. I didn't protect you, Emily, she said almost in a whisper. I was just afraid to destroy what I had myself. I wasn't angry. All the grievances seemed to dissolve inside. I listened, and it seemed to me, now I finally see my mother, the real one without a mask. You don't have to forgive me, she added quietly. I took her hand, and for the first time since childhood, there was nothing extra between us. After that meeting, I couldn't bring myself to write to Michael Reynolds for a long time, but I did it anyway. The message came out dry and businesslike. I, the daughter of Laura Thompson, recently learned of your existence. If you don't mind, I'm ready to talk. The answer didn't take long.
I'm shocked.
I would be happy to meet if it doesn't cause you discomfort. I'll be in New York in a week. The meeting took place in a coffee shop near Central Park. Michael was completely unlike Richard. Soft gaze, calm smile, the intelligent hands of an engineer. We talked about life, about my hobbies, about work. He didn't ask a single unpleasant question, didn't compare me to anyone, didn't judge me for anything. For the first time, I felt that an adult man was looking at me not through the prism of expectations, but simply with interest. In those days, the letters and calls from my father and brother became harsher. You must return the car. I won't allow you to spoil the Thompson name. Get ready for court. I handed the case over to a lawyer and didn't return to the topic. My sister wrote a supportive message. You did everything right.
I'm on your side.
It was as if a new space was opening up inside me. Where there used to be fear and attempts to earn approval, now something resembling calm was appearing. I began to look at my past differently, as a long chain of lessons, not as an eternal struggle. Now, for me, family is not a last name, nor traditions, nor someone's approval, but honesty, acceptance, and support. I finally allowed myself not to be perfect, not to meet expectations, and not to prove that I deserve something more. It was a liberation I didn't expect, and it turned out to be the most valuable thing I have. Half a year has passed since that night when my life took a sharp turn. It seems that now I look at myself from another dimension, as if much is no longer about me. I sold that very car that was once considered a symbol of my desperate desire to belong. I invested the money in a small project, my own business, which I had long dreamed of, but was always afraid to take the first step. For the first time, I allowed myself not to ask permission and not to wait for approval. Life became easier. My sister called almost every day, supported me. We finally started talking about the real thing, not pretending to be the perfect family. With my mother, we also had honest adult conversations, not only about the past, but also about the future, about our fears and mistakes. I no longer listened to the claims and threats of the old family. They were limited to letters from a lawyer and cold official messages. Not a drop of regret, only pride and control. I stopped being afraid of these letters. They no longer had power over me. Meeting Michael, my biological father, became a quiet but real revelation for me. We met again, no longer as strangers, but as people who were interested in each other. He didn't pressure me, didn't give advice, didn't try to fix me. For the first time, I felt like just a daughter, not a project, not a disappointment, not an addition to someone's expectations. The work that used to seem like the only meaning of life has now faded into the background. I started doing what I enjoy, returned to music, started spending more time alone, and for the first time didn't feel lonely. Now I knew that family is not blood and a last name, but honesty, acceptance, and support. People who stay close, even if everything falls apart. Those who can be sincere, don't play a performance for the sake of others. I no longer based my self-esteem on someone's applause. I no longer needed approval to wake up in the morning with a feeling of joy and freedom. I realized that no one but me determines what I deserve and what my true value is. I stopped being afraid of mistakes, started allowing myself not to be perfect. It turned out that this is real life, with disappointments, with losses, but also with honesty, with small victories, with inner support. I didn't hold a grudge against those who hurt me. I just no longer needed their approval. Closer to winter, I caught myself thinking, I don't compare myself to anyone. I don't check with other people's expectations. For the first time, I feel that I am building my own path, and this path doesn't have to please anyone but me. Sometimes fate destroys all the familiar walls so that you can rebuild your home according to your own rules, honestly and bravely. Now I choose myself. And that's enough to be happy.